Welcome agents. Massive issued a community update post today titled Title Update 2.0 and Beyond, which touches upon some of the same stuff they revealed in yesterday's State of the Game and I covered in yesterday's video. However, they did confirm some other things that's new, for example, changes coming to mods and more. Now today I want to go over these new things so you're fully up to speed, so if you enjoy this video, please hit the like button below and subscribe for dedicated Division content. With that said, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm not going to go over everything in this community post. I'm going to go over the stuff that I didn't know about and I never covered in yesterday's video. If you do want to see the full community post, I'll leave a link to it down below, so please go check that out. Now, in the post, they have confirmed that the PTS, which is PC only, will be coming out next week. They haven't confirmed an exact date, but I'm going to probably assume it'll be next Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure which one. And then we are going to be getting Title Update 3.0 on April 25th when we get the Dark Hours raid. So part of that raid will be a title update, which will include all the changes from the PTS, which will start next week. Now, some of the things they've confirmed are that blueprints are being looked into and they're looking to make actually account wide, which again is really, really good, because if you didn't know right now, if you create another character, you basically have to refarm the blueprints. You can't just get them from your first character. So they are looking at actually making this account wide, which is a good change. Now, they went on to talk about character appearance, and this is what they had to say. We will be looking on an improvement for the barber, perhaps a different NPC that would allow you to customize your character further. While we do want to talk about this, we also want to let you know that this is further out and is not something coming to the game anytime soon. So this won't be something coming as part of the update on April 25th. They said we will allow you to change your agent's sex. Bold hairstyle is planned and red hair color is planned as well. I didn't realize that you couldn't actually change your agent's sex. So yeah, that's something new to me. I'm not too bothered about how my character looks in that way, but obviously this is something that the community want, and this is something they are looking to make improvements on, so that's always a good thing. Now, they went on to talk about talents. They said, we want to give you a heads up that we're looking at the performance of talents and have identified some that are too strong and some that are not popular because they are too weak. Now, this isn't in response to Marco Starr's video today about weapon talents. I think there's just a general consensus that some talents are very strong, some talents people just never use, and I'm sure they have all the data of who's using what. So they've said we'll provide nerfs and buffs to talents in an upcoming patch. The goal here is to allow you to choose the talents you want to play without heavily increasing your time to kill. The changes to NPCs we're talking about below will help with this too. So that to me says they're going to be making nerfs rather than buffs. There's certainly going to be some talents that are just pretty strong right now that are certainly going to be getting nerfed. I think you've got clutch on the gloves, and there's a lot of other ones that are going to be really strong, sort of tier 1 talents if you go by Marco style stuff, and they're going to be looking at doing that with actually increasing your time to kill. So yeah, we'll have to go over that. Now, when they talked about the changes to NPCs, and I talked about this yesterday slightly, but they did want to go over it a little bit more. So with game difficulty, they've said we want to increase protection for players sprinting and going cover to cover so that they take less damage in a future patch. Here the goal is to make repositioning a viable tactical option, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit towards the end, so we'll just leave that there. Now, they've said we agree that hard, challenging and heroic mission NPCs can feel too spongy. We want to improve this and decrease the time to kill. We want to test this on the PTS next week, but we are still talking about the exact changes. So they are going to be making probably some significant changes to NPCs and how much damage they can take. They've already nerfed the NPCs in respect to how much damage they can do, and it looks like that's going to go a little bit further, possibly, but it's more about actually giving players more protection and NPCs being less spongy than actually nerfing the amount of damage NPCs do, I believe. They went on to say we agree that control points on higher levels can feel too hard and that NPCs can also feel too spongy. We're talking about possible changes right now, and we'll have more news on that soon. So there's going to be some significant changes to NPCs. Again, they've already made changes to NPCs, and I'm going to give you my opinion towards the end of this video, so we'll just leave that there. Now, they went on to talk about inventory management, and they said, we know it's currently very difficult to keep track of all your items and want to add more filtering options in the future. We want to allow you to recalibrate items from your stash. So that's a cool idea. I think that's really good that they would allow you to recalibrate items from your stash, because it is quite a pain taking stuff out your stash, moving it to the recalibration station, going back, forth. So if they can just streamline that process, I think that's really, really good. And the more filtering options there are, the better. I mean, the more options when it comes to that sort of thing within inventory is always going to be a good thing. So I'm glad they're looking at that. Inventory is something that's always going to be a pain with a game like this. I've heard people saying that they want the inventory space to be increased. I'd probably agree with that, although it's actually going to cost them money, as in the developers money to do that. I think it's something that they need to do, especially when you consider that we've got gear sets coming and people are making more and more builds and stuff like that. I think having 150 in your stash base doesn't really feel like a lot. Now, moving on, they did go over 2 questions, okay? So we'll just go over those now. The first question was, skill builds are underwhelming. It's not really a question, it's more of a statement. Skill builds are underwhelming and require too much of an investment into skill power. Now, this is something you've probably heard about and you've probably experienced yourself in-game. And this is the answer the devs gave in the community post. Answer: skills innately scale with level and world tier to always be relevant. Booster skills from skill power come in the form of mods, where the player can pick their own improvements to the skills. We recently revamped the skill mods so that high-end and purple mods have reasonable requirements for mid-level to all-in skill power builds. I don't think I agree with that. I think there still needs to be changes with that. What we will provide in the next patch is ways to craft blue skill mods to provide options for low skill power level builds. And this is an amazing change. This is actually something I was thinking about, and I saw a video from MTashed who talked about this, and this is something that I cannot wait to actually come into the game, because as of right now, basically none of my skills have mods on, because I just simply... The skill power that's required to make a skill even remotely useful is not worth the investment. Why would I have a turret that can do 25% more damage when I can do 50% more damage with my assault rifle? You know, it makes no sense. There's too much. You have to invest so much into it, which is why I'm saying like high-end and purple mods, still their requirements are still too high, at least in my opinion. They went on to say further, the recent rebalance was somewhat conservative in terms of power level of the mods, and we recognise that currently they don't represent enough impact for the sacrifice made in their other stats. And that's exactly what I was just saying. We will be enhancing the effects of mods across the board in this next update. Our hope is that these further adjustments will make both full-on and hybrid skill power builds more viable. I'm really looking forward to what they've got to do here. I really hope they can make skills viable, because as of right now, you're either building glass cannon or you're building kind of like a sort of tanky DPS build. I currently am running kind of a tanky DPS build for my raid build. In many ways, it's kind of armor orientated, but you get damage from unstoppable force, like on the chest and stuff. So it will be nice to see a skill power build which is actually useful. So hopefully they do a good job here. The next statement or question that they went on to answer was, tank builds do not feel viable as armor and health don't seem to provide enough benefit and sustain. I actually talked about this in a previous video. I agree with that. So let's see what their answer was. They put, we agree. It's a complex issue to solve, but in the interest of transparency, here's our thought process. The way to take the least damage in the game is to kill everything that could do damage to you. Of course. And I said before, the greatest defense is a good offense. So the player's damage output ends up also mitigating a lot of incoming damage in that indirect way. Further, the faster you burst an enemy down, the less time you have to spend popped from cover. Added to that, we didn't want to scale the enemy health as much, as their damage is harder content, always to avoid as much of the bullet sponge syndrome as we could, and so damage output again gets another advantage over defensive stats when moving up in difficulty. Now, that makes complete sense. I mean, from Division 1 to Division 2, they've clearly reduced the bullet sponginess as best they can, and because of that, the NPCs die so quickly that there's no real need to actually have much armor anymore. So it's not viable because the NPCs die so quickly. They went on to say, in the upcoming patch we will overhaul a large amount of talents. Further, we plan to increase the scale of defensive stats when they roll on gear, making each picked defensive role much more impactful. Finally, we are looking at balancing, especially in higher difficulties across the board, to adjust both lethality and time to kill on the enemies for a better experience with more viable build options. The changes to defensive stats and the further adjustment to skill mods, we hope, will also contribute to healing being more viable and efficient thing to do for your team. So I'm looking forward to, again, I'm really looking forward to these changes. I don't know if these are going to be coming as part of the PTS. Actually, I think these are coming as part of the PTS next week. So we're going to be able to test this out. I really, really hope this works. I really hope that they can balance. There's always going to be an imbalance in some way. That's just the way these games are. But I hope that they can get it to a point where you can run a DPS build, or you could run, a tank build, or you could run a skill build, and all of those will be viable. One is not much more powerful than the other, which is what it currently is, certainly with DPS builds. So really, really glad about that. Now, if you didn't know, in today's maintenance they fixed special ammo, so you should see it dropping. With that said, there are reports that it's actually not been fixed properly, and people are still coming across this issue. So if you are, then they have confirmed that an incoming fix should be coming tomorrow. So yeah, we'll have to wait about that. So from what we know, the PTS will be starting next week, and will focus on some significant changes, I can imagine, before release with title update 3.0 on April 25th, when the raid drops. Now, I am 100% behind the PTS, and I don't want any of you guys to take this negatively, because I am fully behind that whole process. But I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit concerned that the changes coming on the day of the raid may well actually ruin a lot of people's builds that have been working on for the raid, because these changes are meant to be coming April 25th. And I know, at least for myself, and I'm sure for a lot of people, I currently have got a M60 LMG build, which I'll be using for the raid, which combines both the M60 and MK17 rifle, giving me good survivability and a good damage. It's a very good sort of all-round build. And except for skill power, which is not on there at all, because it's not worth the investment right now, it's a good build to run for the raid, and I'm happy with it, although there's still some changes to be made. Now, the changes coming with this update might well actually diminish the power of this build for the raid, which would actually be quite annoying. A lot of people have been making a build for the raid, and to have that diminished or changed the day of the raid doesn't really sit right with me, as I'm sure it doesn't with any of you guys. I personally wanted the major changes to come after the raid, so that all of the time that we've invested in making these builds, we're not, you know, there's a good chance here that it's just all going to go out the window when these changes come about. It may be that your build actually gets a lot better, we don't know, but it's that uncertainty that I don't like. I personally would have waited for the major changes to be done maybe a week after the raid, maybe a couple of days, I'm not sure, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. On the subject of game difficulty and NPCs, I talked about it before and how I felt about NPCs. In most cases, at least for me, they didn't do enough damage after they nerfed them in the last patch, and I actually wanted them to go back to the way they were. Now, I do agree that NPC scaling from challenging to heroic is considerable, and I think this does need to be looked at. With that said, if they are going to make it so we can tank much better after title update 3.0, I can imagine the content might just become too easy for PvE, sorry. And maybe that's premature, I don't know, but I feel as though normal is easy, hard is easy, challenging can be quite challenging, and heroic is godly. There's quite a big difference between challenging and heroic. Now, I think if they brought heroic down a little, but kept the game difficulty as it is, that would be fine. But maybe I'm in the minority. At the end of the day, if they're going to make changes to armor, then it's going to impact both PvP and PvE. So I don't really know what the right balance is. But I think the actual balance of NPCs and how much damage they do to you and how much damage you put out is fine at this point. So if they can keep it as that, but still make these changes in the background to armor and stuff, fine. But I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned that the content might just become too easy. Aside from that, I'm really glad the devs appear to be on top of this, and I think the crafting of low-level mods is probably the highlight from all of this for me, and it will be greatly appreciated within the community, especially MTashed. Now, let me know what you think of all of this in the comments below, guys. I may be putting out my raid build tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. I've got a couple of things left to get, but I may put out a sort of work-in-progress build if you want to see it. With that said, I want to thank you all for all your support, and until the next one, Epic out.